Hello. For this month's video, I've decided to take an unusual turn in what I cover in my music by diving into something obscure. Something so obscure that I don't even have that much of it in my music collection. I'm talking about the late 70s, early 80s British rock band Violinski. So now you're wondering who the hell I'm talking about. Well, Violinski were founded in 1977, and they were a rock band centered around the use of a violin in their recordings. Specifically, that of then Electric Light Orchestra violinist Mick Kaminsky. The band was, in a sense, a reunion of several friends and former bandmates into a new group, as many of them had worked together before. For instance, guitarist and vocalist Mike DeAlbuquerque had formerly been the bass guitarist for ELO in the early mid-70s, having been with the band when Kaminsky was brought in. The band ended up being a one-hit wonder, more or less, with their instrumental rock piece, Clog Dance, peaking at number 17 on the UK charts. Despite this, the band persevered long enough to release 2 studio albums, before largely calling it quits by 1984. Partly this had to do with the lack of proper promotion by Jet Records, the label that they were signed to, which led to them being seen as more of an ELO knockoff than a separate band. This compounded another problem the band had when trying to release follow-up singles to Clog Dance. Because they hadn't gotten much exposure beyond this one-hit song in the music press or through label-sponsored promotions, many listeners merely assumed the band's music would largely be instrumental rock, and were confused when the follow-up singles came out. I initially heard of this band when I was collecting Electric Light Orchestra albums in my late high school years going into college. When I found out a best-of compilation of this band was available on CD, I figured what the hell and added it to my Christmas list for that year. I really liked this compilation, but was bewildered by the fact that around half the songs on it are alternate versions of songs from their 2 studio albums, neither of which have been released on CD or, to the best of my knowledge, made available as downloads, despite announcements several times that they might become available. Thankfully, because the internet is the internet, and YouTube algorithms don't do a very good job of enforcing copyright snobbery, I've been able to listen to the original albums courtesy of other channels that rip the tracks from the vinyl records. So I'm going to give the band's overall discography an honest appraisal. Just some short opinions on whether or not they appeared on that best of disc and whether they were the originals or the alternate versions. We'll start with tracks from their first album, No Cause for Alarm. The opening track, Cricket Bloody Cricket, paints a pretty good picture of the band's overall sonic palette. You have a straightforward rock beat and the violin is present, but isn't front and center. Track 2, More Than a Sudden Romance, appeared on the Best Of album in an early instrumental mix titled Tango. This is one of the band's better songs, featuring some great violin solos, although I think the song ends a little too quickly. Track 3, Rosanna, has a kick-ass beat to it, and I'm honestly surprised they didn't release this as a single or at least a B-side. The next track, Need Your Love, appears on the Best Of disc in an instrumental mix, and honestly, I think it's a great ballad piece with the lyrics added. Track 5 is the title track. I really like No Cause for Alarm, partly because of its interesting use of mallet percussion to fill the sound, partly Kaminsky's violin work, and really how often do you hear a relatively mainstream-sounding rock band talking about some sort of apocalyptic disaster? This is another piece that appeared in an alternate version on the Best Of disc, and honestly both versions are amazing. Clog Dance is track 6 on this album. All I really have to say about it is that it's great. And the Best Of disc has both the original and an alternate, more rocked-up version available. Track 7, Save Me, actually appears as is on the Best Of compilation, and I really like it. It was the immediate follow-up single to Clog Dance, and I think it would have charted better had it been properly promoted at the time. Track 8, Time to Live, is both another good ballad and another song that appeared in an alternate version on the Best Of disc, under the title I Don't Know Why. Things take a bizarre left turn on track 9, which actually features 2 songs back-to-back. The first is Cow. The title is a reference to one of the former groups some of the band members were a part of, but the lyrics are very questionable. I'm guessing it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, seeing as the singer is basically advocating that physical abuse in a relationship is better than verbal abuse. But it's still very jarring, especially since an early instrumental mix is featured on the Best Of disc under a different title, Princess of Darkness, and as an instrumental it's actually pretty good. Even more of an odd left turn though is when it jumps into the second song on the same track, Caped Crusader. a frantic song about the daily personal struggles a superhero deals with over the course of his life and career. Were these two put on the same track as some kind of weird pair of opposites? A villain followed by a hero? It's awfully confusing. Caped Crusader appears on the Best Of disc as it is, although it and Princess of Darkness are separate tracks. The closing track on this first album, Die Abende Glock, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I don't speak German, is a 1.5-minute long instrumental featuring some lush instrumentation. As for their second album, Stop Cloning About, there's some differences from the first in terms of sound. There's use of synthesizers on some of the tracks, giving parts of the album a sound more in line with new wave, and several band members handle lead vocal duties, whereas the first albums were largely handled by one band member, though I'm not really sure which. The opening track, Ruby Rhythms, is a very straightforward rock piece, even for the band's overall catalog. An alternate mix appears on the Best Of disc, but both are really awesome. Track 2, Captain Dandy, is my overall favorite song by Violinski, and it appears as is on the Best Of disc. I especially love that frantic violin part. Track 3, Silent Love, also appears as is on the compilation. It's very synth-heavy. Track 4, Magic Man, is a track I'd best describe as okay. What's Your Game appears at track 5 and is also included as is on the Best Of compilation. It's one of the tracks on this album I'd have to say is pretty in line with the feel of the first album. The Drinking Song is the next track, and it's a nice little wistful piece. Track 7, Mirror to Mirror, appears as is on the compilation, as does track 8, Hide It. I'm not that big on either of these songs, but they're not bad. Hide It does actually have some pretty good guitar work. Track 9, See You in My Pillow, is an okay ballad piece overall, though it does feature some nice pizzicato violin bits in the refrain. Track 10, In the Distance, I think had some chart potential. The only problem is, Jet Records screwed the band over again, and it ended up as a promotional single only, which meant it didn't really have any chart performance. An early mix of it appears on the Best Of disc. Track 11, Clear Away, appears as is on the Best Of compilation. It's another song I think is okay, just not exceptional. The closing track, an instrumental song called Home to Tea, appears in an early mix on the Best Of compilation. It has what sounds like a sitar part as well as more pizzicato from the violin, which is a nice touch. As for the Best Of collection, there are a couple of songs included that didn't appear at all on the original albums, or as singles or B-sides. They are Borderlands, a pretty and violin-heavy instrumental, and Rock Steady, a keyboard-heavy piece that features a guy named Bob Brady on vocals. Fittingly, Brady is best known as a member of another band with ties to the Electric Light Orchestra, the part jazz rock, part 50s rock, part glam rock band Wizard. Overall, yeah, the band's only a very minor footnote in rock music history, buried in the Electric Light Orchestra's shadow like several other related bands, but I honestly think that the band's actual studio albums shouldn't be left in the vinyl-only limbo that they're currently sitting in. If the tapes are available and can be cleaned up as needed, would it hurt to make the albums available in some downloadable format at least? Even with some questionable stuff like the song Cow, I'd be willing to buy it from the standpoint of a collector. Thanks for listening.